Good morning and welcome back to my garden. If you remember last year, I did some videos about my community garden space. And I actually have a bigger space than I did last year. Earlier this year, they asked me if I wanted to upgrade to a larger plot, and of course I said yes. So I spent April and May moving my plants and planting things out, and now it is mid to late June. It's cold and windy today, as you can tell. And I think I have everything pretty well established and growing now, so I thought it'd be fun to show you around. So yeah, let's take a look at what I have this year. First, I have my coffee, which is obviously very critical to every gardening adventure. I tend to come here in the mornings because it does get hot, although today it's actually quite cold. And yes, coffee is great. It's a 20-foot by 10-foot plot, rectangle shaped. So my coffee's in this little corner, and I have tomatoes here. I have quite a few tomatoes this year because they did so well in my other plot last year that I wanted to plant them out. However, it's been way colder this year, so they're getting a slower start. I tried to keep track of what tomatoes these were. I planted them from seed back in March, and they did lose their tags when I transplanted them out here. But I have some general idea. I know that these closest to me, like this large one right here, these are like the large heirloom slicer type of tomatoes, and then the rest, especially those along the edge, are various kinds of cherry tomatoes. I'll know once they fruit what kind of cherry tomato they are. So I put in this path down the middle so I could easily get around. That's something I learned last year, is I had a hard time accessing all my plants, but we've had so much rain this week that it washed out. I may have to get more mulch and repave the path. So down here at the edge of this low tomato patch, I have sweet peas. I have some basil. This was looking great. I do think it got a little cold the last couple of days, but it was looking wonderful. I had planted some basil from seed. I have some volunteer kale. I think it's volunteer. I don't remember planting it, but it's possible I planted it. I don't think I did though. So down here I have more tomatoes. This is like my overflow tomato section. This one I grew, I believe it's a type of cherry. These I bought as started plants. So this is a Cherokee purple. And this one I believe is called a Rapunzel, which I had bought last year, and the plant I bought last year that was tagged Rapunzel ended up being a San Marzano. So I'm trying again just because I feel like I wanted to try the Rapunzel tomato. So I've started some perennials here. I started this peony this year and it was doing fine last week. I am not sure what happened to these leaves. This is a bee balm, Monarda. There's a bit of lavender, calendula, more lavender. That lavender is blossoming. Very pretty. These are calendula that I grew from seed. They're still coming along. Looks like I have a sunflower here. I'm actually not supposed to grow sunflowers here. I hope it doesn't get too tall. The reason being they don't want things that are too tall. This is echinacea. This is a type of black-eyed Susan flower. Some more calendula down there. Looks like I have another sunflower coming. These are cosmos coming along, and I believe that's a zinnia. So next up I have a patch of cilantro that I actually planted. Last year in my garden spot I had cilantro that came up like crazy all year. This year this plot had none, so I did put some in so I could harvest some for myself and my pet guinea pigs. I also put in this currant this year to start establishing because I like currants. I think they're pretty and their leaves smell wonderful, and probably a year or two there will be fruit. So this is kind of the far side of the garden plot. And what I decided to put in here, other than the cilantro and currant, are my squashes. I also have a few nasturtium flowers that I planted. I see they're coming up along the edge there. So the squash this year, I decided to try a summer squash. I believe it's called a patty pan, and there's also tons of weeds. These are weeds. These are squash, so these should be my summer squash in the first little spot. The next spot, I believe these are a squash called honey nut, which is like a mini butternut squash. I tried it last year from a farmer's market and I really loved it. So when I saw the seeds for it, I wanted to try it. The next one is delicata, I believe. And then in the far kind of ring, these are, well, I guess I'll have to tell you a bit more about those, but they are called a Montreal melon, and they are a melon that used to be cultivated here on the island of Montreal about 100 plus years ago. So I'd always heard this myth about the Montreal melon, and Montreal had these famous like melons that they grew, and so finally this winter I was looking online and there was a local producer of seeds. So this is a close-up of one of those. So yeah, so I'm trying this Montreal melon. It's actually funny because I guess the seed kind of like went extinct because people weren't really growing it at home. It was just the farmers. And it was found at some point in a seed collection in the United States. So that's it. That's kind of my melon corner. Now, do I have enough room here to grow so many melons and squashes? Probably not, actually. We'll see. So this is mostly weeds I need to take care of today, but there's a Cosmo. One of my neighbors here gave me some pepper plants. So that's one. They're quite small now. I don't know that they're going to grow up enough in our short growing season. This is actually this is my first year trying to grow one of these. It is a dahlia. Seems to be doing well. Behind it there, I forget what that is. Oh, wonderful. Oh, this is a digitalis. Okay. Great. I don't know if it's going to bloom this year because they should be in bloom now. Maybe it takes a year to establish. But I think they're really gorgeous, and I have kind of a shaded corner over here. So this is some sweetgrass. Oh wait, is this the sweetgrass? No. This is, looks like a garlic or an onion that I stuck in. I have some zinnias back here, kind of with the melons. And then here I have a gooseberry. So this is the gooseberry I actually had last year. There's one little fruit right there. It should be fruiting a lot more this year as its second year, but transplanting it had tons of flowers early this spring, but transplanting it seems to have really disturbed it. And as you can see, there's only like 3 or 4 fruits. I have chives. They're flowering. Yeah, so this looks like a garlic or an onion. I did have garlic growing. I started it last fall in my old plot, and then it was transplanted twice, actually. Long story. So I did not have high expectations, but it seems to be, oh yeah, it has escape. Look, there we go. Some weeds, but also I have some broccoli here. I have never tried growing broccoli before. It's a type of Italian broccoli. One random tomato, but also a lot of volunteer tomato plants that I don't want to pull out, but I don't know how they're going to grow here. Calendula. I have some weeds, but also some zinnias mixed in. It looks like there's a type of kale or something back there that is not mine. Must have volunteered. In front of the wood, behind the wood is some plants that were already here in the garden. But in front of the wood there is some lily of the valley I put in this spring to establish. I have some irises. They were from my old garden plot. They had been there when I arrived. Plus I added one this year, a black one. It was quite pretty. They already bloomed in late May, but they were really pretty. have all these really nice flowers along here. That I'm trying to pull weeds out and cultivate the flowers. These were here before me, from probably previous gardeners just putting in flowers in this this is not part of my garden. It's like a little public space along the sidewalk. But right here, I have the most comments from everyone passing by and looking at my garden on this bush, which is a blueberry bush. So I grew up in Michigan near a lot of blueberry farms. And so this reminds me of home, and blueberries seem to grow perfectly well here in Quebec, but no one like in a home garden tends to grow them, I notice. But they do really well, as you can see. They're doing great. This is either another zinnia or sunflower. These are actually daylilies that I had in my other garden. I'm not sure they get enough sun here because they're not growing very fast. They may have also been shocked by all the transplant. On the other side of the blueberries, I just have these cucumber plants. These are Marketmore cucumbers. You know, I tried growing them from seed and they didn't do so well, so I actually did buy the started plants. And while I find that melons and cucumbers and squash never transplant super well, cucumbers are probably always going to be okay. I just took a coffee break. Okay. So next up, we'll talk about the last corner of my garden, which is a kind of what I'm calling a medicinal herb garden. I find it really interesting to learn and grow plants that are used for therapeutic purposes, and they're a little less common in gardens. But yeah, I've kind of always been fascinated by less common plants that are used, you know, for I mean, I guess you could say health, but like just well-being. So let's talk about them. So first of all, I put in 2 raspberry bushes. These are 2 that I grew. One is an autumn fruiting golden raspberry, which is that one. And then this one should be more mid-season, like a red raspberry. And I will note that my neighbor, right, you know, 2 or 3 feet away, also has raspberries doing really well in this area, so that's why I put the raspberries here. Her plants seem to be doing great, so why not put mine here as well? I did try to grow some lettuce down this area, but I noticed it's mostly been eaten. And then I had these are mint plants, so this was here when I got here. I did pull a lot of mint out. It can be quite overpowering, but I also put strawberry plants, my strawberries here. As you can see, I have some nice strawberries there. Strawberries and mint grow well together, and I think the strawberries are aggressive enough to kind of like stand up to the mint. So rather than battle the mint, I'm just going to let the strawberries and mint work things out. This is a type of blue chamomile, I believe, that seems to be coming up. I planted something called Woad, which is used actually by dyers. It creates a blue dye. It's more common in Europe. And that's what I believe this is, and this. Planted something else. I'd have to check my notes to see what this is, but this is something coming up. Wow, that tells you a lot. Something is coming up. But these are some of my herbs from last year. I do have thyme here. That's in flower. That was transplanted. This was transplanted. This is... I'm drawing a blank. Anise. I believe it's Anise Hyssop. And then this is another type of hyssop. So this is the most exciting one to me because I started growing this last year from seed, and it's St. John's wort. So it's actually a common plant. It's sometimes a weed. I actually have seen some growing as a weed near my house. But I wanted a plant that I could grow and just, you know, make sure that no dogs had gone to the bathroom on it or whatever. And I'm going to use the flowers. I'm going to pick the flowers, dry them, and make a tincture. And it's supposed to be really good in winter for like purposes of treating seasonal depression. And so I'd really like to try that. This is just what I'm going to try. This is not confirmed or advice of any kind, but just wanted to tell you what I'm using it for. So that's St. John's wort. And then this is also really exciting that I found this. This is Meadowsweet. So it's quite a large shrub, as you can see. I ordered it from a nursery around here. Meadowsweet was a sacred plant to the Celts. And I consider myself a descendant of the Celts, and I've put some energy into learning about plants that they used a lot. And it was used for therapeutic purposes. Now, this is not, I've done a lot of research. I don't think this is the same exact plant as the meadowsweet you get in Europe. It is from North America. That's extremely closely related. It is supposed to have blossoms at midsummer. We're approaching midsummer, so the summer solstice. I do not see any, so it may need a year or so to establish. I couldn't find information on that. Behind it, this is a type of hyssop, I believe. I may have to confirm. Oh wow, the smell is really good. This is exciting because this is also verbena. It's once again a plant that I grew because it's sacred to the Celts. It was used a lot in Northern Europe. And it looks like it's starting to blossom, which is exciting. I grew some of it from seed, but then there's a seller who specializes in a lot of these kinds of plants who is also selling it this spring, so I picked up an extra plant. I believe these are the ones that I grew from seed, and this is the plant I got from the seller. Very nice. I'm very pleased with that. It's really pretty, and pollinators love it. And speaking of pollinators love this. You might not recognize it, but it's actually the common garden sage that we use at Thanksgiving for stuffings, for whatever, for cooking in the fall. It will go great with my squash. And I can't believe it. We had an incredibly cold winter. We got down to -40 Celsius, -40 Fahrenheit. And yet this still survived. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it's, I guess it is hardy to that temperature. I'm surprised it is though. And being its second year here, it went into bloom. Sage has beautiful purple flowers, so I'm enjoying those, as are the bumblebees. Behind it is a plant that is a sacred plant here in North America, which I think it's important to acknowledge that too. This is sweetgrass. So the Native Americans would grow this and use this. It can be harvested, tied up, braided, and used as a purifying, cleansing smoke. I think it's really beautiful. It smells wonderful when it's dried. And, personally, I think it's important to try to incorporate some plants that were used and cultivated and honored in North America. This is a holy basil, and I planted some more from seed, and I can't tell if any of them came up or if these are just weeds, so not too much to say there. And then kind of in the center of this little herb garden down there is a rose. So this is actually the rose, J.P. Connell is what it's called, but it's a type of rugosa rose, which creates rose hips. So I'm growing it for its rose hips. And I have some roses at home that have put off tons of growth. I'm not quite sure why this one has not. It's maybe because it's working on its roots, which is fine. I don't expect a lot of blooms in the first year, so I think I'm just gonna give it some time and let it establish. So that's my garden so far this year. Let me know what you think. And I'm going to post some update videos this summer, so I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.